So COVID-19 began as a threat to human health, but it quickly has evolved into being potentially a major economic crisis. And various ASEAN countries are scrambling to support livelihoods that have been otherwise destroyed by the economic restrictions that have been placed on countries as a result of trying to deal with the virus itself. Now, what does this mean for Southeast Asia's largest economy, and now also the country with the largest number of COVID cases in the region, Indonesia? The Economist Intelligence Unit, and also supported by reports from the Indonesian Finance Minister, Sri Mulyani, has estimated that growth this year is likely to be down to about 1%. And research that's recently been published then in the Bulletin of Indonesian Economic Studies has shown that a growth rate of 1% is likely to mean 9 million Indonesians being plunged into poverty by the end of the year. The World Bank has also put together a worst-case economic growth scenario, suggesting that we could have possibly negative growth of negative 3.5%. That being the case, then we might actually see up to 20 million new Indonesians being plunged into poverty. That worst-case scenario is based on a situation whereby Indonesia doesn't get the virus under control, and we therefore have a prolonged economic crisis as a result of the health impact. It's therefore worth reflecting on how Indonesia is actually going at the moment in terms of managing the virus itself. So initially Indonesia was quite late to respond to the virus, but by May, large-scale social distancing measures were already put in place, and Indonesia even attempted to ban the end of Ramadan Mudik, return to the kampung, at the end of the fasting month. Although having said that, with economic pressures mounting over time, President Jokowi also announced the so-called new normal policy, under which various economic activities and social activities have been allowed to recommence. And judging by the increasing number of COVID cases that are being reported daily in Indonesia, this new normal policy appears to have been something of somewhat premature. And Indonesia also one of the countries with the lowest testing rates per million head of population in the world, and it's also is at the moment the tests returning some of the highest positive tests out of anywhere in the world, and all this suggests that the virus is probably running rampant across the country, more so than the confirmed cases suggest, and indeed it's spreading now into the more remote corners of the country. So in response to this, the Indonesian government is implementing a number of social protection measures to support livelihoods, as are other countries in the region. These supports included things such as cash payments for affected families. And Indonesia started instituting a social protection program back in 1998 in response to the Asian financial crisis, but it's still developing both the fiscal and the administrative capacity to implement these programs effectively. So whilst we're seeing, since the virus itself, a number of households have been given access to emergency payments equivalent to around $40 per month, although as of July, this has been reduced back to around $20 per month, and some of these programs are also being wound back by September. And so, judging by the relatively small value of the payments being made, they're generally considered not to be sufficient to actually address the livelihood crisis affecting many households. So as a result of the relatively thin supports being provided by the government, many Indonesians are now relying on informal social protection programs or informal social protection systems to get by. And this, as in the 1998 crisis, it has also meant a lot of people are returning to agriculture and farming and rural communities as a way to get by. While the urban areas of Southeast Asia have been most affected by the virus, that's where a lot of the retail closures have occurred, where a lot of layoffs have occurred. It's actually rural Southeast Asia that is being affected more and more over time. It's been affected by reduced remittance payments from people from the cities. It's also being affected by return migrants who are then competing for scarce resources. So even though right across Southeast Asia we see sort of rapid rates of urbanisation and industrialisation, a significant share of populations are still reliant to varying degrees on smallholder farming to get by for their livelihoods. and to provide this sort of informal social protection system for households. And yet this critical social safety net provided by rural communities is one that's often overlooked by policymakers across the region. And while some governments have appealed to their citizens to go back to nature or go back to the farm as a way of supporting their livelihoods during the current crisis, there's less appetite for strengthening these systems during the good times. And I think what we would like to see to be able to make livelihoods more resilient in crises such as the ones being experienced now is to have governments also supporting community access to resources, to land, to fishery stocks, to forests at other times, rather than simply prioritising resource exploitation for economic growth. And of course also need a lot more investment into ensuring effective social protection systems are in place in Indonesia and in other countries across the region.